because I remember on In Full Gear, it was like credited as him doing the drums, but when did he actually join Stetsasonic?
During On Fire.
Okay.
During the On Fire, and then it was, I think Bobby went out with us. First major tour, Bobby went out with us.
Okay.
First major tour, we had a drum riser and everything.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And another song that I really liked was the My Rhyme, and I remember when Dana Dane came out with Delancey Street, how you had mentioned it on there, and I was like, oh, they're talking about the same thing. Yeah. What for you made Delancey Street such a remarkable place?
Oh, it's still a phenomenal place. But you know, that is where we used to shop. Like when we were young, I always tell people when we were teenagers, we were wearing tailor-made pants. So we used to go to Delancey Street and buy material, pick out the material, design the pants on a piece of paper, and then take it to a tailor in Brooklyn, this guy Moon, and he would make the pants. But everything that was of style in those days was purchased on Delancey Street. So any of that style you see, the sheepskin coats, the gabardine pants, the Pumas, all of that was on Delancey Street. It's not like you couldn't buy it at other places. Fordham Road in the Bronx had some stuff. Pickens Avenue in Brooklyn had some stuff. Jamaica Avenue in Queens had some stuff. But Delancey, you could go to Delancey and buy it. And a lot of times we used to be able to negotiate prices on Delancey Street. You go in there and say, how much is the sheepskin? And he says, it's 300. And you walk out and he goes, wait, come back. You know, you might walk out buying that same coat for about $220 or something like that. So, I mean, you know, it was there. And I mean, you know, it's still, Orchard Street is still there. And there was a quad, because everything, Delancey Street had all the real stuff, because there was fake everything. You know what I mean? So like we used to wear this brand called Quarterfield. There was fake Quarterfields. We used to wear this brand called Stratajack. There was fake Stratajack. Delancey Street always had all the real stuff. So we used to shop there a lot.
Okay. And also on that song, you mentioned about how Sade should have won the Grammy, and then you were also talking about the different cities with Miami and LA. And I was always wondering, like, at that point, had you been to Miami and LA, or were you just saying that like aspirationally?
No, we did a few spot dates here and there. So we had been to those places, but not. If you notice, the mentioning of anything on Fire is a total different type of mentioning when you get to In Full Gear.
Yes.
Because when you get to In Full Gear, it's all experiential now. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know, in and out, we might have been there, you know, did a little hit, came back, you know, those kind of things, but nothing like after that, we ended up going on these major tours and spending time and understanding those territories.
Yeah, because it's much different to mention it than to do a song like Miami Bass. Very
right.
different. Very
exactly.
different.
Yes.
I understand fully. So the other thing with, since you did have, interestingly, a lot of singles, even though it was a short album lengthwise with just the 10 tracks, did you guys sign originally as a single deal, or did you go straight?
No, we signed as an album deal. I mean, the credit that I'll give Tommy Boy is Tom always wanted to be a real record label. Like, he never wanted to be like a bootleg record label, or like a label that nobody respected. So we signed an album deal. I was just happy to have my guys, because I don't know if I would have been able to even do it without them. You know what I mean? I think about certain people that were solo artists, and you know, although they might have had like a nice first blast out of the gun, how, you know, second and third blast was like, you know, it died down, you know. And I always give the guys in my band credit, because it's like it's like being on a team. It's like being on any type of team. And so when you're on a team, you could be a Jordan, but you still can't win a championship without them guys. Steve Kerr, Dennis Rodman, Pippen, you know what I'm saying? Horace Grant, you know? So, but it was an album deal. We signed an album deal. I mean, we signed an album deal with, and you know, we were just trying to, I mean, we used to collectively decide, meaning it was us and the label, as to what those singles was gonna be, what those B-sides was gonna be. A lot of it with Tommy Boy was about reaction. And remember, so those were the days where if somebody from the press was to get your record, they wanted it 6 weeks in advance. And they wanted the whole thing. This is the days when journalists used to say, don't send me a single. I want to hear the album. I want to, you know what I mean? So we would have pretty much some kind of taste tester feedback on, you know, what kind of had those potentials. And then, you know, going out on the road, even playing local shows like Latin Quarter and the Rooftop, and doing a record like Faye and seeing what the reaction was, you know, would allow you to know, yeah, that record could be a single.
Now, the biggest single, of course, is Go Stetsa, though, I would say, or the biggest song, per se. So do you remember when you guys were making it, what was the feeling and what did you feel different about that song in particular when it was being recorded, or realize what it was?
Go Stetsa goes in my book as being, I got a few. One of the best mistakes in my music career. When we used to go to Tommy Boy, Tom owned a Lindrum. And you know, Lindrum back then was big. You know, DB had his own machine, but Tom owned the Lindrum. Tom used to allow us, because, you know, to go in the conference room at Tommy Boy and write. So we would go in the conference room at Tommy Boy, which had the big speakers, set up all our equipment, turntables, DB stuff, Paul stuff, Tom's Lindrum, and write. The only thing we didn't have there was a mic, because we just making the music, we would still be writing there. When we wrote Go Stetsa, to that, I always call it, I call it a James Brown pattern, because it comes that pattern that James Brown has on, I think it's the break to Give It Up, Turn Me Loose, where it goes boom, da da doom doom, da da doom da da doom doom da doom. That's the rhythm. Now take a sec to check the pedigree. No, and that's what we wrote that to. Okay.
Okay.
When we went to Calliope, that was the studio we recorded at. A guy who we made famous. Now he went on to do D'Angelo and all these other records. Bob Power was our engineer. Bob was so anal about everything he did. It would take Bob anywhere between 40 minutes and an hour just to pull up a rough mix before we even started recording something that day. Bob was out, I don't know if he's out sick, had an appointment or whatever. So Chris, I think his last name is Schwinn, that owned Calliope, I think. He said, Daddy, Bob's not here today. I'm sending in another Bob to be your engineer for the day. And here comes Bob Coulter, who later on would be my engineer for a lot of things I would produce. I'll go back a little bit. When we did that Go Stetsa thing, Delight said, I want some live drum rolls on that song. Just like cymbals and rolls. Still keeping the Lindrum, but he wanted the rolls and the, I'm not saying you can't, but it's pretty difficult to do that on a drum machine, the way we wanted it to sound. I'll never forget, I went out and bought big sheets of oak tag, took a marker. The drum booth in Calliope was up. So the board was down here and it was up. And literally we brought one of our friends into the studio. He was a friend of Delight and mine. Put him on the drums. And I was holding up a sign when I wanted him to hit a cymbal or when I wanted him to hit a roll and all of that kind of stuff. Calliope had a way that they recorded drums that was very unique. They would put two mics on the drum set, stereo, And then there was a bathroom way in the back, and they would put a mic in the bathroom for the ambience. So Go Stetsa is 3 tracks. It's not mic, it's not the kick, all of that. It's 2 stereo tracks and that mic in the bathroom, that ambient mic. Anyway, now I can move up. Bob Coulter comes in to engineer. This is the first time I ever seen somebody do, like push up a mix this quick, because I'm working with power all the time. He pushes up the vocals, all the vocals that's there, and all he does is grab the 3 tracks of that live drum. Now, what happened with the guy that was playing the drums, he was doing the roll stuff for us, but in order to keep tempo, he was doing boom, that, boom, boom, just to keep the tempo. Mm-hmm. And I heard our voices for the first time with just our voices and just those live drums. And I looked at him and I said, erase all of the Lindrum. And he said, you sure? I said, absolutely. That's my record right there.
Wow.
And that's what made it. And then what makes it dope is, like, if you listen to my part, after the middle part, when I do the chant with the punch and the verbal grenade, when you hear me do the Brooklyn, New York is our hometown and the drums dry up, that's just turning off that ambient thing. And now it's just a 2. And then we picked it back up.
Well, see, that's the thing you're getting to about the sound, which is really not totally, of course, but I think lost to a large degree in music today. Because even like in my rhyme, I remember there was like the echo and the pan at certain things. And that's I think the beauty of music when you have live stuff, or even when you're creative and scratching, when you're fading or something, it's just that level of experimentation and willingness to try those different things or make an accident and find something out great.
Right.
But that's a process. That's a artistic endeavor that I think we lose, not all, but a lot of that on a computer screen that we don't necessarily get by having how it used to be, I guess.
Well, I say that, and then when I teach, I also make people very much aware of the cultural interaction of hip hop in that time. Meaning, Bob Coulter was a Canadian guy who moved to New York, right? Who basically turned me on to Iggy Pop and everything that was, anything in that area, because that was the kind of stuff he used to listen to. Hip hop's new to him, he just knows how to engineer. But him being there made a big difference, right? And so the beginning of it, I don't want to say beginning because Melanin is kind of the beginning, but that time had more than just, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just keeping it a buck here, a rapper and his friends there. So that's the difference, right? I'm not sure so much if it's just the computer screen, but it's just them, right? It's his cousin making the beats and his friends in the studio. No Bob Coulter's in the studio, nobody from any other culture in the studio, just you and your weed smoking friends in the studio. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes that might make the biggest hit in the world. A lot of times it might fall on deaf ears. Most of the time it's something that's on the chart for 2 weeks and goes away. And that's because hip hop is not that type of expression. Hip hop is a universal expression. It's not an expression from one place. Because if you think of it, I say this all the time. When I teach and I tell people about, and people always ask about the 5 elements and the 4 elements and all of this. Very important to understand this, and this is no disrespect to us. The rappers came last.
Absolutely.
We was the last ones to come. So prior to the rappers, you had every race known to man trying to DJ, do graffiti and dance. Then came the rappers, which was majority black guys rapping, and it's nothing wrong with it, but it's just the issue of having that multicultural influence is what shaped it the way it shaped. you know, and you know, a lot of that rightfully can, you know, is benefited from it being from New York, right? And New York being the melting pot that it is, and us having Delancey Street with Jewish people, and the Bronx with Hispanic people, and you know what I'm saying? So part of it was that New York is this melting pot, and this is that music kind of coming out of the gut and the belly of this melting pot. But it was so much influence. It was so much influence that even if it was just, just this one session that one guy just doesn't show up, another guy shows up and pushes the mix up in a different way, and I got a hit record out of that. I don't know. I'm not saying Go Stetsa wouldn't have worked the other way. It's no way it would have worked the way it does.
Right.
But that made Paul say, I'm grabbing Tom Jones looking through my window. He heard those drums and he went bam, bam. You know what I'm saying? Because it was those drums that made him, you know what I'm saying? So it's an interesting situation that, you know, all throughout my career in music, that's what it's been for me. You know, look at Tommy telling us, we don't have a hook. Use that line that Daddy-O says at the end of the song. If you can't say it, or just say that. It's that. And I think nowadays what happens is that you can't make hip hop in a vacuum, man. It comes out. That's what makes us, some people say, I don't say it, but that's what makes some people say, that's not hip hop that I'm listening to. If they listen to, you know what I mean? Because it's not that it's not hip hop, but it's like it's a vacuum, and that vacuum is tough to listen to.